Power to the people. We are going to discuss global liberation. I think there's a difference between revolution and liberation. Revolution generally implies the violent overthrow of the government. I'm not advocating that here. We have seen, if we study the history of revolutions, that many times they fail. They stray away from meeting the needs of the people and become an empire. Look at the failed Russian Revolution of 1917. Look at the Chinese Revolution. Look at the horror of North Korea. So we have to really be understanding of what revolution is about, what it's not about. I advocate now global liberation, exhausting all legal, peaceful methods of struggle to achieve our strategic goal of the seizure of power. We need to get control of the state, the government, the machinery, the media, the land, and the institutions thereon. The reason why we aim for our desire peaceful global liberation is because many times when revolution is done through violent means, it creates resentments that last for generations. You know, if we look at the history of revolutions and study them, we can learn so much. We can learn a lot. And we do not want to repeat the mistakes of the past. You know, if you look at the Cuban Revolution, you know, Che Guevara was Castro's hitman. You know, he knew him not being from Cuba, he could get away with the elimination of certain Cuban enemies at the time. And later on, Che Guevara left Cuba. You need to understand why. It had a lot to do with him advocating moral incentives over material incentives, which at the time was in contradiction to the then Soviet Russia. So this caused conflict between Cuba and Russia. So he eventually went to Africa and he went to Bolivia, where he was killed by the CIA. So at the time, he wanted to get the support of the Communist Party in Bolivia, and he didn't get that. So there's a lot to go into, there's a lot to study, and I'm not here to give a historical lesson, just so that we remember some stuff. You know, the most successful revolutionary party in the USA, to me, has been the Black Panther Party. They have the survival programs, and these are great programs. They started the Breakfast for Children program, and they wanted to build a community infrastructure and to mobilize the black community to eventually lead to a confrontation with the state power. As we know now, there is no Black Panther Party as there was before. So there's great lessons to learn from there. We need to think in terms of global liberation. No one country can be fully liberated as long as global corporate capitalism rules the roost. So even though there may be a section of land liberated by a revolutionary movement, it still lives under the power and the domination of global corporate capitalism. So we see now that we have to not only eliminate it in a local region, we have to eliminate it globally. We do not even have a strictly U.S. ruling class. It's really a global empire. And the corporations, they don't have any fiction of nationalist loyalty to a particular nation. Their main drive is for profits. Profits before people. The most successful movement going on right now is the Occupy Wall Street movement. And that, along with other social justice movements, can help to raise consciousness and widen the revolutionary struggle. So we need to look at the big picture. At the same time, we got to look at ourselves. Fight for global liberation, but find your own inner liberation. This is going to be a protracted war. It's not going to happen overnight, nor in a few years. It's going to take time. Hopefully within a decade. No, there's no crystal ball. So, in the process of creating global liberation, we have to develop ourselves to be the kind of people we want to be in the future. That means being kind to one another, caring about one another, loving one another, and seeing that right now we be doing the work we need to do that will form a cultural foundation for future liberating activities. We need to promote a cultural liberation where we use the power of the word, we use power of image, we use all that we can use to raise a revolutionary consciousness. The ultimate aim of global fascism is to destroy all revolutionary consciousness, to get people hung up on promises that are never fulfilled, to get people hung up on striving for reforms, and to have us not see the big picture, the global picture. We need to see that democracy itself, by the majority, is great in theory, but in practice, it has not worked. Democracy seems to leave out the minority, those who are not of the majority. So we can look at representative democracy, which we're supposed to have now in the USA, but do we really? The majority of your people in Congress are millionaires. So they obviously do not represent the majority of the people in the USA. So we live under a corporate controlled democracy. It's not an authentic, genuine democracy that not only is governed by the majority of the people, but respects at all times, the interests of the minority who are not represented in that structure. So maybe we need to be thinking in terms of egalitarian, of true equality all the way throughout the social structure, and be open to new ideas. You do not have a crystal ball that works as far as I know. So the idea here is for us to study history, to study the history of past revolutions, those that have succeeded, where they succeeded, and those that failed and how they failed. The old Marxist crap doesn't work anymore. There is no Soviet Union. You know, the Communist Party USA is a total failure. You know, I'm not easily labeled. I'm not a Marxist. You know, Marx to me was a racist. So when you look at his opinions about Mexico, we are glad that our comrade or compañero Hugo Chavez won in Venezuela. It may be a good model for us to look at and to see how we can apply the lessons of other countries and their experiences, what we're going through here in the USA, and to think in terms of global liberation, not just a regional area. You know, we look at Egypt, you know, we look at Libya, we look at other countries that have done well, yet not as well as was expected. We need to create a humane society where people participate in the government, participate in the democracy, a participatory democracy. So I will continue to do sharing about global liberation. You know, instead of having a bunch of different little titles, I'm just going to have the global liberation video, number it, and that will be that. Try to keep it simple. God bless you, and thank you for your time and your attention. Power to the people.